Pro.Gnosis, a podcast with Armon Ree.
Welcome everyone to Pro.Gnosis episode 12. Today we have with us the guest Eyevolution Smith, someone who's particularly the playlist about the importance, the occult or symbolic importance of the 2020s really caught my attention. I thought it was a very good series, done over apparently a span of years. And I found him so interesting that I thought that I would share him with you. And of course, please check his channel. That will, as always, be in the show notes. So welcome, Eyevolution.
Hey, how you doing?
All good here. I hope you are as well. Like you said, as much as you can be, right?
Yeah, it's crazy times.
It is.
But there you go. What's new?
So let's start with how you got interested and then eventually involved in this field, let's say, in this circle of, people who look at the world from different perspectives other than, mainstream and even alt media. How did it start for you?
I think for as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in mystery, in the weird, the things that most other people aren't interested in. Mm-hmm. And I also blame my parents. They were and still are, voracious readers. And particularly my father, he had a lot of occult books, Colin Wilson type stuff. There was one as well that caught my eye on the bookshelf when I was quite young, called The Ancient Wisdom. I think it's by Jeffrey Ash. And when I pulled that off the shelf and flipped it over to look at the front cover, it had a version of the Rebis on it, the Divine Androgyne. Mm-hmm. And I was at once horrified and found it utterly hilarious that adults would read this kind of thing. This strange two-headed humanoid holding weird equipment, surrounded by strange symbols, standing on a fire-breathing dragon. Adults read this kind of stuff, I thought.
That was Marvel or DC, you thought, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's got to be one or the other, surely. But I thought, well, this looks interesting. Let's read it. And I think from being about 13, 14, that kind of thing, I've always wanted to look at that kind of imagery and read about that world. And I think I grew up in that kind of era as well. I'm a 70s baby, getting on a bit now. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And there was all kinds of stuff like that, particularly late 70s, early 80s. The Unexplained magazine series, I remember my dad collecting that. And the 80s TV was kind of leaning towards that. You had Uri Geller knocking around and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I think I've always just been interested in mystery and the weird. The weirder it is, the more I want to know about it.
Right. And for the younger audience, what Eyevolution is saying is really pertinent because I was born in '79, and if you wanted, some, let's say, alternative kind of literature at the time, you could really find interesting stuff. It doesn't mean that it was necessarily, entirely true or whatever, but it was for sure interesting literature. So I can perfectly relate, although we apparently have some age difference, but I can certainly relate to those times when a book could open those avenues that nowadays generations will get the internet for, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the period before the internet, isn't it?
Of course,
I mean,
yeah.
if you were born in '79, you will remember a world completely free of mobile phones and the internet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was all that we had was, books, TV, music, radio, and book fairs, things like that.
Yeah.
And you would often find these curiosities in book fairs,
Mm-hmm.
like those kinds of books, and I still try and go to them when I can, and I try and look for that sort of stuff. I
Yeah,
really enjoy it.
interestingly enough, you still find curiosities in book fairs.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
in second-hand bookshops and that kind of thing. You still find very particular or even outright bizarre books there. Of course, probably mostly out of print in the sense that they're not printed now, but in those second-hand kind of markets, you're still going to be amazed at what you find. And
Absolutely.
so, Eyevolution, and how did you? What was the motivation? And how did you start yourself being involved? You looked at the world and you said, "No, I have something to share. I have something to contribute with." And I think your contribution is incredible. It's on the one end very pertinent and informational in the sense that you go into the astrology. Symbology correlation to the narrative in the world, but also very entertaining on the other hand, which is something that it's captivating as well. But in any case, how did you get motivated and felt, no, I have something to contribute. I'm going to share my insights with the world.
I think I always find that these things, that the astrological correlations and the anything else that I find that I deem worthy of inclusion in stuff that I present, it's always revealed to me in some way. I always stumble across it, and I think it is best explained with a little bit of a story.
Mm-hmm.
The first and probably the most popular thing on my channel, the first thing I ever really did regarding this sort of thing, and it's certainly still the most popular, but it's the oldest, so I suppose it would be, is a series called Do You Believe in Magic? And it's all about the astrological correlation of, well, we'll call it the September event, perhaps.
Oh, you can say 9/11 for sure.
All right, okay,
Yeah.
that's all right. Yeah. So yeah, it was the astrological correlation of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Tropical astrology, obviously. Sidereal, I don't do that. But the tropical reading of 9/11, quickly kind of skimming through it, is there was an opposition, so two planets facing each other in two opposite signs, if you like, on the astrological wheel. Mm-hmm. Saturn in Gemini, Saturn, planet of structure, in Gemini, the sign of the twins. Mm-hmm. That gives you a great below correlation of the twin towers. Don't think that's a stretch. Mm-hmm. Opposing Pluto, planet of transformation, destruction, in Sagittarius, the sign of higher mind, religion, Sagittarius, if you like.
Sorry, just to interject. And Sagittarius is the archer, so symbolically, the arrow could have been the supposed plane, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's beautiful. Yeah, and obviously that's quite well known now. That reading and that, my series is relatively still well viewed, and I get quite a few comments still about all of that on that video series. Mm-hmm. But I kind of stumbled across that. I round about the time of 9/11 in August of 2001, I was in a really bad place. I was in a bad relationship, toxic relationship. We shouldn't have been together. We shouldn't have been together. We had split up, but we were still living together, which is I don't recommend.
Well, it
Right?
depends. It depends. I'm in a similar situation, but it works for me. So
Yeah. Well,
So
trust me,
that-
this wasn't working. This was
Yeah.
this was awful.
destructive. Yeah.
She took advantage of the situation. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
The fact that we would separated, but we were still living together. Anyway, I'm looking for a place to live, and whenever I would be out and about around town, or on the way to work or whatever, at the beginning of September, I would notice these really dark, ominous black clouds. I felt as though something wasn't right, and I felt as though something was coming. And I tried to express this, and I'd never. You never think that you're going to be correct in these things, or at least I never do. Anyway, I forgot about that. That period, that feeling passed over the next kind of 10 days or so. And the morning of 9/11, remember it clear as day, beautiful bright day where I was, sunshine beaming in to the place that I lived, and there was a knock on the door. Okay, who's this? I answered the door, and it was a friend of the lady that I was living with. She was returning a book that my lady friend had left at her house. And she said, "I've got a book. I'm returning it to your ex." So I said, "Okay, come in, do the sort of English thing. Let's have a cup of tea." And we
Some
sat
scones.
down.
Yeah.
Some scones, yes. And we sat down and we're having this cup of tea and a bit of a chat. And she said, "Here's the book." So she reached into her bag, quite a large bag, and she pulled out the Parker's Astrological Almanac. And I took it off her and I said, "Oh, thank you," and I'll return this to her. And I'm looking at the book, and I remembered that I used to have the 93, 94 version of it, because it's a yearly thing that they release with an ephemeris in the back and stuff like that. And I remember the artwork on it, really distinctive artwork in the Parker's astrology book. And then, of course, we got the phone call, "Turn your TV on." And we watched it all happen. Well, the second plane. Well, if there was a plane, sorry, no planers.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually over the next couple of days, I found somewhere to live post 9/11, which is another story. But I moved in, and I don't know if you do this wherever you are, but in my neck of the woods, whenever you move in somewhere, if you want to decorate, you put newspaper over the windows. It sounds really strange when you say it to somebody that doesn't do it, but if you've got no curtains, or you want to take your curtains down to be able to paint the woodwork on your window frames, put newspaper over the window panes. I know this sounds like a weird story, but it is going somewhere. So I'm putting newspaper over the windows. It's an English tradition when you're decorating. And I come to this page, taping the newspaper on the windows, and there's a little article, tiny little article, probably towards the back of the newspaper, about the Saturn-Pluto opposition of 9/11.